Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the Port of Bellingham Board of Commissioners regular meeting for Tuesday, February 18th, 2025. I'm going to close the executive session and reopen the public meeting. And I'm going to start with roll call. Commissioner Bell?
Present.
Commissioner Briscoe? Oh, not here yet. Okay, maybe we'll wait just I think I'll read the advisory committee meetings and then we'll come back to roll call. Commissioner Briscoe is joining us remotely. He's out working, and we'll try and get a hold of him and have him connect. We've got two advisory committee meetings that are upcoming. First is our Marina Advisory Committee, or the MAC, March 11th at 6 p.m. The Port Admin Office here. That's an in-person meeting. And our Bellingham International Airport Advisory Committee, or our BIAC, April 17th at 4 p.m. You can join that meeting on Zoom or in person. And for those members of the public, there are multiple ways to connect with our meetings. We always appreciate and thank everybody who shows up in person. Thanks for joining us. We are also on Zoom and on YouTube. So we try and make lots of opportunity for folks to be able to attend, comment, and connect with us. We do have two public comment periods. The first will happen as soon as we're done with our roll call. And then the second happens at the end of our regularly scheduled business. We ask folks who are providing public comment to keep their comments to about 3 minutes and to make sure that they're constructive and, well, they don't have to be constructive. We just ask for them to be respectful to both those around you in the room and those here. So, any luck on Bobby? Okay.
You're assuming that what we say is constructive.
I know that's. I said the word and then I just had to walk it back because it just had. Making a lot of guarantees there. All right.
I thought you were dead. Oh, that's not even close to being dead. That's about as alive as you get, dude. Tamara got a joke?
He's going to be the only phone number.
You're not.
Okay, maybe he's just giving it a go.
Okay. Looks like we've got all of our commissioners here. I'm going to redo the roll call. We'll start with Commissioner Bell.
Present.
Commissioner Briscoe. Sure he can be unmuted. Bobby, make sure you unmute yourself or aren't muted. Okay. Commissioner Briscoe, we're seeing you as muted if you're able to hear us. Maybe we can send him a text as well. Okay.
Now, can you guys
Yeah,
hear me now?
We got you. All right, Commissioner Briscoe's present as well, and Commissioner Shepard is present. All three commissioners are accounted for. All right, we'll go ahead and move into our public comment period. Do we have anyone signed up? Let's see. Let me see if we get our sign-up sheet here. We ask folks to sign up if they're planning to provide public comment, but anybody here, either online or in the room, is welcome. All right, thank you very much, Tiffany. First person I have is Zach McCowan.
Good evening, Commissioners. I don't know if you guys want to start. I can start. My name is Zach McCown, and I work as a representative for the Western States Regional Council of Carpenters. I live in Conway, Washington, 98273. Not sure if that's needed, but there it is. I'd like to start this public comment out by stating that there's not enough allotted time in this public comment to even scratch a surface on community benefit agreements, project labor agreements, or community workforce agreements. I'd be lying to state that I'm not in support of these agreements, but let's be clear. I'm not here tonight to participate in a workshop or a committee. I'm here to ask this board to take a neutral stance. I'm here to ask this board to listen to both sides before formulating an opinion. And I'm here to ask this board to not listen to just big business, but offer the same opportunity to the hardworking men and women who live in Bellingham and Whatcom County. I could have led this conversation with stating the number of municipalities, cities, counties who have listened to both sides and found enough in these conversations to adopt such language. I could have led with saying how Snohomish County just recently passed an ordinance for a community workforce agreement. I'm not leading with this because this is the port, and it is not any of those cities, municipalities, or counties listed. This is the Port of Bellingham. And this board makes decisions that impacts the lives of the constituents that it covers. I ask that everyone here tonight be curious, do some research, and if you would like to know more, set up a time where we can have a real productive conversation. Listen to both sides to ensure the most educated decision is made. I ask this group to invite labor to present their own PowerPoint, and at the end, let the best decision be made that impacts not just the port, but the people who live and work here every day. Thank you very much for your time. I greatly appreciate it.
Thanks, Zach. Second person I have on my list is Mark Ridsdell. Did I get that close? Close. All right.
Good afternoon. My name is Mark Riedesel. We wanted to take this chance as an opportunity to introduce ourselves. So we're one of the port's businesses here. We own Island Opportunity Charters with my co-partner, Craig Hogan. We operate Bellingham's only water taxi, direct connection out into the San Juan Islands. We've continued to grow. We've added another boat for this next season. And we just wanted to say thank you to the port for accommodating us and letting us grow and be a part of the community. I also wanted to say I'm also the owner of Barlean's Fishery. I'm not a Barlean's. I bought it from the Barlean's family. But with both companies, we look to further collaborate with the port and expand and grow together. And I just wanted to take this as an opportunity, since we're approaching year 2 with the boat service, to introduce ourselves. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Next person on my list is Lance Calloway.
Actually, I thought that was the sign-in sheet.
Okay, I think we're going to hear from you later.
Lance is presenting later.
Yeah.
That's okay.
All right. We'll hold off on Lance till later. Next, I have Carl Dijon.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. I am Carl DeYoung, and I am Vice President of the Washington State Labor Council, AFL-CIO. And the Washington State AFL-CIO represents over 60 unions and almost 600,000 organized workers in our great state. I'm here today to discuss why project labor agreements, PLAs, and community benefit agreements, CBAs, are not just sound policy, but essential tools for ensuring the taxpayers' dollars generate the greatest return for workers, businesses, our local economy. Well, critics argue that PLAs inflate costs, limit contractor competition, and create administrative burdens. The reality is quite different. PLAs stabilize costs by eliminating project delays due to labor disputes and by locking in predictable wage rates. Without them, labor shortages, work stoppages, and subcontractor disputes drive up costs far beyond any initial savings from lower wages. Studies consistently show that PLA-covered projects are delivered on time and on budget, with fewer change orders, reducing hidden costs often ignored in non-PLA projects. As for competition, PLAs do not exclude non-union contractors. They simply ensure that all contractors, union and non-union alike, meet the same high standards, prevailing wages, safety training, and apprenticeship opportunities. If a contractor cannot meet those standards, we should ask ourselves, is that really the kind of business we want handling public infrastructure? Now let's talk about community benefits agreements, often mischaracterized as restrictive hiring mandates. CWAs don't create shortages, they invest in local labor capacity. When we set goals for hiring local workers, veterans, women, and people of color, we're not creating obstacles. We're ensuring that publicly funded projects uplift the community's footing the bill. A well-structured CBA doesn't force unqualified hirings. It builds the workforce pipeline so more workers, more local workers, gain the skills and experience needed to compete. Port projects should create careers, not just temporary jobs. CBAs do exactly that. They require registered apprenticeship programs, meaning young people in Bellingham and across Whatcom County can enter the skilled trades without taking on crushing student debt. The return on investment? Well, a stronger local economy where more residents earn family-supporting wages and spend their paychecks at local businesses right here. The bottom line is this: PLAs and CBAs deliver results. They guarantee high-quality work, enforce a fair wage, and ensure that infrastructure spending benefits the community, not just the lowest bidder. This port has a choice: to invest in a high road economy that supports working families, or allow a race to the bottom that leaves us with cost overruns, safety risks, and a workforce that's no better off than when the project is done. We urge you to prioritize PLAs and CBAs in future projects here at the Port of Bellingham. Let's build a smarter, fairer, and for the long term. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Young. D. Young, got it. Thank you. Anybody else in the room wish to provide public comment? Yes, come on up.
Good late afternoon, Port Commissioners. My name is Kaylee Galloway. I'm on the Whatcom County Council, and I'm the prime sponsor of the ordinance in which you were discussing on today's agenda. I'm not used to being on this side of the mic, so I just ask for permission to read off excerpts of a memo that will be presented to the County Council at next week's council meeting, outlining some background information and the policy process this item has undergone. So I'll just read: as Whatcom County embarks on several large capital projects over the next decade, it's an opportune time to consider how we ensure these public funded projects reflect the community's needs and values through a community engaged process and result in tangible community benefits, such as supporting our local economy and workforce. Discussions around these topics began last year as we conducted research to understand potential policy options and learn from neighboring jurisdictions. Throughout this policy process, many stakeholders have been engaged, and there is still a lot more outreach to do. We recognize a policy of this magnitude takes time and thorough process, and we're also hoping to act with a sense of urgency as we recognize some of these county projects are already underway. I want to just speak a little bit about some of the policy options we have sort of started discussing, as well as some of the desired goals and outcomes. So first, some of the policy options we are considering are community benefit agreements, or CBAs, project labor agreements, and community workforce agreements, PLAs or CWAs. We're also exploring what a priority hire program looks like, what incorporating conditions of bid and contracts, applying state labor standards to county projects, conditions of budgets, as well as a labor compliance program. So as you can see, there's lots of different policy levers. But the desired goals and outcomes around our community's needs, values, and benefits, I think, are something we can all get along with. At a high level, we want to foster a community-engaged process that ensures public investments in county public work that reflect the community's needs and values, such as supporting local economy, local work for local workers, and workforce development. Some of these specific goal strategies and outcomes that this ordinance aims to do is enforce prevailing wage. And so we're considering what establishing a labor compliance program might look like. We want to build upon existing county apprenticeship utilization requirements to further enhance workforce development. We're looking at a priority hire program that supports local jobs for local workers and also promotes access and opportunity for women, minorities, and veterans in the construction trades. We want to promote workplace safety and protect workers from discrimination, harassment, and retaliation. We want to accommodate workers' childcare needs and coordinate with them to ensure that employers and workers alike are getting their needs met. We want to think about sustainable building techniques that are consistent with our own climate action plan. We want to mitigate project impacts as identified by the community. We want to modernize administrative processes, such as developing a prompt payment program to reduce administrative burdens and remove financial barriers, especially for small contractors, and streamline paperwork and reporting processes. And we want to improve communication and coordination between county contractors, labor, and community as it pertains to future county public work. I hope that something in all of that resonates with the Port Commission. I do hope that you all will continue to be our partner in policy on this, as I do believe our values are aligned, and I think there's a lot of opportunity moving forward. So thank you. And happy to be here to answer questions or also make myself available later. Thanks.
Thank you, council member. Appreciate it. Anyone else in the room wish to speak?
I think it'd be a good time to say that there will be another public comment period, so at the end of this meeting. So if there's anything that you hear during the meeting that you'd like to respond to at the end, I think that would be inappropriate.
Yeah, second public comment period comes after a regular scheduled business. Anybody online? No? Okay. All right. We'll move on to our consent agenda. Terry, please.
Motion to approve the minutes from the February 4th, 2025 regular scheduled commission meeting.
So, sorry, Tracy's new at this, so I'm going to jump in here. Motion to approve items A through C on the consent agenda.
Normally we would just approve the consent agenda as a whole, unless there's any specific items that we want to pull out. So, yeah, thank you, Tracy. Any questions or items, Commissioner Bell?
No.
Commissioner Briscoe?
I have none.
Okay, thank you. And I don't have any either.
Motion to approve items A through C on the consent agenda.
Commissioner Bell?
Yes.
Commissioner Briscoe?
Yes.
And I'm a yes as well, carries 3-0. That concludes our consent agenda, and we'll move on to our action items. Tracy, we typically read each action item and then have any associated presentation. And then when we're ready to vote, we'll have you read it again, and then we'll vote and move on to the next one.
Wonderful, thank you. Motion to authorize Executive Director to execute a letter of approval for Millworks proposed Phase 2 project development document. This will be presented by Brian.
Thanks, Tracy. Good afternoon, Commissioners. I think I've got a couple slides here that I can walk through here in a moment when they get pulled up. Here we go. All right, thanks. Yeah, so this action item is related to the ongoing development in the waterfront district, and specifically the second phase of work at the Millworks property, which is located at the corner of Cornwall Avenue and Laurel Street. So As the commission's well aware, last year we had the first phase that was completed, people moving into the first phase of the project there at the Mercy Housing Affordable Housing Project, as well as the 6 classroom early learning center. This project that we're going to talk about now is the second phase to that. So that's immediately adjacent to that parcel. And while that project was going through construction and development, the Millworks team has been working, which we'll walk through the steps here, on advancing this to where we're at today, and hopefully then moving forward onto the next phase of construction down there here very soon as well. So just as a reminder kind of on how we've been doing these projects in the waterfront district, we're trying to do them kind of in a phased approach where we come back with multiple times where we check in with the Port Commission. Because iterations of projects go through some changes, we like to go through some milestones, check in, get approval to keep the projects moving, but also keep the commission informed. So just where we're at right now with this one, as a reminder, back in 2022, we entered into an option agreement with Millworks LLC for this second phase parcel. And that had a step-by-step process. In 2023, they presented their first project concept design, which is kind of a high-level look at where the layouts, what the project is anticipated on including. That one actually had a fair amount of detail in it, and that was approved by the Port Commission in March of 2023. We issued this authorization to proceed. That allowed them to go into the much more detailed work of like site survey work, geotechnical design, looking at letting their architects get into a lot more detail. They went through the city's kind of early land use process that included some public comments, some public review there as well. So they've been working on that. So where all those green check marks is where they've been progressing per the option agreement. So right now they've gone through that. They've got a lot more detailed information from their construction partners as well, like what can they really build? How does this really cost out? And inevitably with those types of things, there's always some changes that come. The hopes, of course, are that it's just more refinements and there's no big wholesale changes. But if something came out of that process, we want to be able to check back with the commission and say, this is really different than what they originally had anticipated. That's not the case here. They're really, you'll see the design is really consistent. They've just gone through some refinements. It's looking really good. It's getting a lot closer to what we, where they'll be closer to construction. So pending commission approval here then, just the next steps would be they would submit for city building permits. They'd finalize their land use process with the city. And then once they get those building permits in hand, then we'd go forward with the property transaction, and then they'd start construction. So those would be the next upcoming steps, and I've got a slide on that as well. So that's how we're trying to approach a lot of these projects in the waterfront district. So this is the Millworks Phase 2. This is a top-down view, just to give you a little bit, and I've got a few other images. This is Laurel Street. This kind of shows, again, like they've gone from concept, they're getting it now into much more detailed design. This is, I think, one of the planting layouts for the plaza that's on top of the parking garage, which I'll tell you a little bit about. But just for location of where you're at here, this is Laurel Avenue, or Laurel Street, Cornwall Avenue here. This kind of white building is the currently constructed Millworks Phase 1. And then you can see that this takes up the remainder of the parcels between Cornwall and the railroad tracks. This is kind of an outline of the alcohol plant, just for location of where you're at. So like I said, it's immediately adjacent to the Phase 1 work at the Mercy Housing. They submitted this project design document that's before you for consideration earlier this month. Staff has reviewed it. There's a definition of what should be included in that document in the agreement that we have. Checked all the boxes with that. They included all those elements, and Port staff feels like they were meeting the intent of this document. And like I said, it just builds upon the previous concept. So what it includes is, and again, some of these renderings here, these are still early. There's some refinement, but you're starting to go from like the big white boxes that were just kind of blocky to getting some more refinement. Some of the materials, the colors, any of the colors can change, of course, but this is starting to really shape up to what they are envisioning for this to look like moving forward. It's a 7-story building, meets all the building heights requirements, and there's some view corridors in and around there as well. It includes a ground floor food campus with commercial kitchens. There's spaces that individuals can rent just by the hour for commercial production of things, all the way to leasing out an entire kitchen space that they can have their own refrigerator and space. But then as they grow into maybe going from a startup idea to a full business where they need a commercial kitchen, they can grow their business within this food campus as well. It includes retail space that could be for a variety of different uses, including the folks that are leasing that space. They might be able to sell their goods there. It includes processing and other things like that as well in the ground floor. Second floor is a shared office space for a variety of nonprofits to have kind of shared resources there. And then 5 floors of residential rentals focused on workforce housing, about 109 units there. And the workforce housing, the way they're defining that is kind of, the millworks or the Mercy housing, it was the affordable housing, that was 30% to 60% of average mean income. The workforce housing is what, around here, we kind of talk about that missing middle where there's, it's about at 100% of average mean income. 100 to 110 would be about where the market they'd be looking at for these units. And so that, and then it also includes a multi-story parking structure on the backside, as well as a layer of underground parking below the structure. And on the top of that parking structure, it includes a plaza, event space, and like a kind of an urban garden. And then you can see here on this backside, this is where the plaza would be back here, and then kind of a large podium that has a plaza that comes down to kind of a staircase that wraps around and comes out to Laurel. That would be publicly accessible as well, and probably maybe even some commercial space down here on this area. So a lot of things being integrated into this. This is getting, going from concept to full design, so they really are, these aren't really ideas as much anymore, as now they're moving in towards implementing and getting those things really refined. So the approval process here, I kind of walked through it already, but pending commission approval, we'd issue this approval of their design documents. Within 120 days of that, they would be submitting building permit applications to the city. The city permit process is its own process, right? So we try to stay out of that, let the developer work with the city, and they'll get once they get their permits in hand, then we would move forward with a property sale. We do have built into this, though, the back end of that is a final construction occupancy of December 31st, 2027, which was in the original option agreement, and they're on target to hit that as well. So they're right where we want them to be in both the design and the schedule. So, then here's just a few more renderings to just kind of show a variety of different layouts here. They'll be coming forward with a lot more of those. Staff recommends approval of this document. I'm happy to answer any question. We also have Alex Spalding, who is from the Millworks team, the project manager for the Millworks team, and we're both available to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you very much, Brian. Any questions or comments? Commissioner Bell.
Has anybody got an over-under as to whether or not this gets completed before the third building of the Harcourt agreement? If not, I'd like to start the line. This is wonderful. We've had a great experience with millwork, and this is a wonderful project, and we do certainly want to see it go forward. So I think this is the next step, and you have my full support. But I do want to take bets in the back room about completion.
Commissioner Briscoe?
So Ken, are you, I was going to ask Ken if he's proposing that we start a millworks board, kind of like the Super Bowl board and World Series board. Is that what you're talking about, Ken?
Look, if I'd have started every bet board that I wanted to along the Harcourt path, I would have been a very wealthy man by now.
No, all I've got to say is that I'm very impressed with phase one, at the speed and that it was done with, and the thought that went into the stuff. And the document we're just shown here in front of us indicates that the second phase is going to be just as well done. And kudos to the millwork group. You've exceeded my expectations greatly, because I was one of the 3 commissioners that was apprehensive about what you folks were going to do. And I'd just like to say that I think you've done a damn fine job to point, and it looks like you're going to continue. Kudos to you guys.
Okay, very good. Yeah, phase one turned out fantastic. The building's beautiful. It was constructed on time and on budget, and it was immediately filled up to occupancy. So it's been a really nice success story. It's gotten families at the waterfront living there, enjoying all the amenities that continue to come up, and we're really looking to the second phase to continue this build out, bring more people who are living down there year round and making use of services and contributing to the economy. One question, I don't know if this is for Alex or for Brian. How do we maintain the affordability standards that you are targeting over time?
I think that would probably be a question for Alex. I mean, from operationally, from this, I would defer to the developer. But from the overall waterfront, you know, we're tracking our interlocal agreement with the city to see how we track that out overall. We can track that with things like the any restrictive covenants that are on there, like on the Mercy housing, there is a covenant that says they will be maintained for X number of years. Those are the types of things we'll track. I'm not sure on this project. But,
yeah, I'm not sure. Can you clarify? Like, what do you mean exactly?
Well, you set a target of workforce housing
Yeah.
for the kind of threshold that you're going to be providing rents at. How does that get maintained over into the future? We have other, you know, affordable housing systems in the community, like
Right.
Colson Community Land Trust fixes their rates at a certain level. Mercy uses their own formula for fixing rates. What do you guys intend to apply here to maintain this level of affordability?
You know, I may not be able to answer that specifically here, but I think we're a nonprofit developer. We're planning to own this building at least for the first 10 years. There's a whole thing to the capital stack as to why. We're looking at affordable ownership at the end of that 10 years. And I think it would be in our commitment to this project and how we're building our capital stack. But I would have to follow up with you. I mean, Maury would really have to answer that question. I'm not on that side of things, so.
Okay.
all right, and also just to clarify on that one, from our perspective, we're not viewing this as one of the affordable housing projects. So there's no covenants or anything that we're requiring as part of this development. If they choose to do that for their approach, that's a little different.
I think that's an important note because there is a requirement in our agreement with the city that a certain percentage of the housing down there be affordable housing.
Yeah.
And if they want to trigger that, if they do want to put it, and we'll continue to work with them, if that's something they choose to do, then we could probably count that as well. But so it depends on how they want to approach this one. But there's not, from our agreement with them, there's not a requirement for that.
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I would just love to follow up, either with you, Alex, or with Maury, to hear a little bit more about the thought process there.
You know, as you know, affordable housing like Mercy does, there's federal rules around this stuff, right? And what we're looking at is workforce where there's a lot of people who have jobs who can't afford the housing here. And so we're making a commitment based on the intention of our project to subsidize and offer housing in that window. And so that's just our intention with the project, so.
Yeah.
I don't know how else.
We clearly have a need for it.
Yeah.
And like to make sure that continues into the future as well. So, great. I had one more question. Let me see. Just, this project is making use of the opportunity zone and some of the particular financing benefits there. Could you just describe that so that we hear a little bit about these opportunities?
Sure.
It's my intention that other developers who are participating in building in our waterfront district would also have ability and hopefully see the opportunities that this zone provides.
Right, so Opportunity Zone funding is a federal program. There's opportunity zones all over the country. We have 3 here in this county. One of them is the waterfront district. And what it allows is that you can get investors who are part of an opportunity zone fund, and there's incentives for folks to defer capital gains if they invest in projects in an opportunity zone. So part of our capital stack is currently we're working with a national organization called Arcturus. We don't have everything inked yet with them, but our intention as part of our capital stack does include, I think it's about 18 million of opportunity zone investment funds. And that has a 10-year horizon. That's part of that. There's a couple things for the 10-year hold till we would look at affordable ownership. Part of it is the condo laws in Washington State are difficult for developers, and then also the opportunity zone laws have a 10-year hold, and then they out in 10 years. So we have to have a process by which they their investors exit and get a return on their investment from that 10-year hold. Is that
okay?
Okay.
Yeah. It's a good program, and $18 million is significant. So I'm glad you guys are following up on those and bringing that kind of investment here to the community. I don't have any other questions. Any other questions or comments?
Just, you guys have been incredible partners.
Yeah.
I have none.
So with the Opportunity Zone Investment Fund that we're working with, we're looking for it to be a community fund of $50 million that they will bring to this community. So that's part of the Millworks LLC is owned by the Whatcom Community Foundation, which is who I work for. We're a nonprofit in the community, and our intention is that everyone in Whatcom County thrives. That's our vision. And so part of bringing the Opportunity Zone investment to our project is also expanding that opportunity. So every time we meet with Arcturus and they come to town, they're meeting with other developers, and we're encouraging other developers to consider Opportunity Zone investment. And they do place-based funds, which is part of why we are working with them. And we're in negotiations on a $50 million Whatcom County Opportunity Zone fund. We don't need all of that 50. I mean, we could use all that, but we don't. We still have to pay them. It's an investment, right? They get a return. So the money costs us money to be part of our capital stack. And so that's why the part of the 50 million that we're looking at is 18 million.
Okay. So part of a larger investment into the community here that we're using this project to partially leverage. Very good. Okay.
Our goal is to make sure that we have enough jobs within walking distance of your facility that they can actually walk to work at some point with our waterfront.
Yeah. All right, Tracy?
Motion to authorize the executive director to execute a letter of approval for Millworks' proposed Phase 2 project development document.
Commissioner Bell?
Yes.
Commissioner Briscoe?
Yes.
And I'm a yes as well. Carries 3-0.
Thank you, Commissioners.
Thank you, Brian.
Motion to approve the modification of lease between the Port of Bellingham and Halibut Henry's LLC.
Should have a slide.
You want me to run through what's on their menu while we wait? I know it by heart.
So Commissioners, this one, while we're waiting, I've spoke to you individually about this. We're just trying to align the lease more with the passenger counts at the airport. After Southwest left, you can imagine our vendors at the airport saw a big decrease in passengers. So this aligns the rent with the passenger counts.
I'm Annika Bjorkman, Senior Property Manager in the Real Estate Department, and I'm here to present a lease modification for Halibut Henry's. Some background, Halibut Henry's currently leases just under 1,500 square feet of retail, storage, and office space. Their current rent is $670 a month plus 6% gross receipts. Their lease term currently ends July 31st, 2028, and there's one remaining 5-year renewal. And their lease premises have been well-maintained with capital improvements. The proposed lease terms, as Rob said, it changes the way that they pay gross receipts. So if total monthly employments are less than 25,000 gross receipts, if total monthly employments are less than 25,000, the gross receipts would be 2%. And then if total monthly employments are between 25,001 and 33,333, they would pay 3.5%. And then if the total monthly employments are greater than 33,334, the gross receipts would be 6%. And then the rent would remain the same at $670 a month.
Very good. Thank you. Any questions or comments? Commissioner Bell?
Yeah, we have to do this. If we're going to recruit at the airport, we've got to present well, and they've been an amazing partner. So I'm okay with this.
Commissioner Briscoe?
Yeah, no, this is in line with what's going on. Can't expect folks to pay a big bill if they don't have a lot of people coming across the street. So I'm in a great place, eaten here a couple times, and I'm
Yeah, it's important to have options for our customers and travelers through the airport, so we want to make sure that we continue to have that. And we're going to keep doing all we can through our incentivization and outreach efforts to get more flights and get more carriers. That's just a continued focus for us. So, any other questions or comments? No. All right, go ahead.
Motion to approve the modification of lease between the Port of Bellingham and Halibut Henry's LLC.
Commissioner Bell?
Yes.
Commissioner Briscoe?
Yes.
And I'm a yes as well. Carries 3-0.
Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. That ends our action items for the day. We have a presentation, and then we'll move into our last public comment period and other business. So our presentation is presentation on proposed county ordinance presented by Pete Dawson, CEO of Dawson Construction, and Lance Calloway, AGC Northern District Manager.
Hello, and thank you, Commissioners, for hearing us. I'm Lance Calloway. I'm the Northern District Manager for Associated General Contractors of Washington. Our organization, we represent as a chapter 50% union, 50% non-union across the board. We first heard about this community benefit agreement when Kaylee Galloway, Councilmember Galloway, called a meeting on December 18th to present, and she had provided myself as well as several other local contractors who were invited to a meeting with a proposed document that had the language that we are discussing, a community benefit agreement, but it also had incorporated a lot of aspects of the project labor agreement. And the contractors that were in the room were all non-union contractors. And this is a concern to them because the project labor agreement does do many of the things like Carl and Zach talked about. It talks about apprenticeship. It talks about prevailed wage. But those are things that are all required currently anyways in state law. This past year, HB 1050 requires any municipal project right now, it's at about $2 million and above, has 15% apprenticeship. These contractors are aware of that. They've acquired their apprenticeship programs and they have their employees going through them. Prevailed wage, that is set by the state, and so that's set on every job. So there's no issue of who's getting paid what. It's based by the prevailed wages that are set by the state of Washington. But what does come into concern is the situation that takes place when a project labor agreement is engaged, in that it places a situation where the non-union contractors can compete, as what was said by our fellow labor partners. However, for those partners to compete, their workforce are required to become part of the union for the duration of the project. And so that means that these contractors are paying their wages, are paying the benefits into the union trusts, particularly the retirement one, and they're also taking care of paying the current retirement benefits, because when they're done with the project in a year or two, they're going to go on to another project. And so they want to make sure their employees don't lose out. Often these employees, when they're involved in these project labor agreements, they don't stay long enough to vest into these retirement benefits, and they forego those to the union. When Kaylee presented this caused a lot of concern for many of the contractors in the room, and we ended up, talking with a lot of folks, and quite honestly, I reached out to over 80 companies that, got back to me. They're representing nearly 5,200 workers that are in our community that would be impacted by this ordinance as it goes through with the project labor agreement language. This is a concern because many of the contractors told me their employees don't want to be signed on to a project labor agreement. They realize that there's a lot of benefits that their company is providing them, and they're happy. These workers have a choice to unionize if they choose to do so, but they don't. We have nearly 80 companies. Many of these you see every day going about on the streets of Whatcom County. The situation is, this is not a anti-labor stance. I'm looking at this as a pro-worker stance and supporting the workers of our community. I initially, after the bond was passed for the jail, I met with county executives and then all the county council members encouraging them and providing a paper to show them how we can look at creating the best situation for workforce development, developing our local economy, and supporting our local workforce by trying to make sure the jail is going to be built by predominantly local contractors and local workers. And so that's when intrigued all of us to go to the meeting when we met with Councilmember Galloway, because we do want our major projects to be here local. We also want our community to benefit. Councilmember Galloway talked about a few things of building green and sustainability and maybe providing childcare and stuff along those lines. I don't think any of our contractors have any objection to that. Those are all good things. But those aren't things that are determined by the contractor. That's determined by the owner of the project. It's what they're wanting to pay and what they're wanting to put out for that project. That is not the obligation of the contractor. That'll be something that'll be put into the contract documents that they're going to be required to take care of. Many of the things that are being discussed can be easily done within the contract documents. And in this situation, we are in the best scenario right now for an equitable footing for bidding publicly. Because as stated earlier, there is apprenticeship, there's safety, and there's prevailed wage. All of them are applicable, whether union or non-union. You have the best opportunity to get more bidders onto your contracts. And in this case, you have a far greater possibility of having a greater number of local workers that are going to be participating in these major projects in our community. I'm going to turn it over to Dan.
Thanks. Hello, my name's Dan Arnold. I'm the general superintendent.
I did leave out one thing.
Just kidding.
Yes, sorry. But through some of our discussions, we had provided a letter to the county council about many of the things I just talked about, how we could make this work, community benefits, but basically removing all the aspects of the project labor agreement. We had also been reached out to by the small cities after a presentation with the Whatcom County Business and Commerce Committee. They then also submitted a letter to council, Whatcom County Council, to oppose implementing the community benefits agreements as written with the project labor agreement language. And also, there was the Lummi Business Council. They are in opposition to project labor agreements being implemented into large capital projects. And one other piece that I failed to mention was January 20th this year, federal court ruled against and struck down PLA language, and that they stated that it was actually project labor agreements are reduce competition, increase costs, and create inefficiencies for contractors and procurement officials. And these are many of the things that you will hear from many contractors and people that are looking to, make sure it's a fair and equitable situation. And that's what we're wanting to have, a fair and equitable situation for your contract bidding.
And Lance, before you leave, you had a way of phrasing something I just need rephrased.
Yep.
Because English is my second language. You talked about how dues were paid in.
Yes.
That employees didn't necessarily use.
Yeah.
Explain that in.
What will happen?
Bring it down to the third grade level so I can.
And I'll touch on that.
Yeah, actually, Pete will be covering that in more depth.
Okay.
So, Dan?
Sure.
I'm sure. Sorry.
Hello, Dan Arnold here, General Superintendent for Dawson. Just want to go over a couple things. I'll do a brief.
Go ahead.
Brief review of where I am, where I've came from, just so you can get an idea. So I started my career in Alaska, did 12 years as a union carpenter, from foreman to superintendent. I've been with an open shop for the last 12 years, so you could say I've seen both sides. Now I'm the advocate and lookout for our carpenters, laborers, and operators here at Dawson. In considering a project labor agreement or other union mandates, I would like you to consider, here in Whatcom County, good construction workers are in demand. They are interviewing us and choosing where they want to work. If we're not providing top wages, best tools, safe, clean job sites, they will not choose to work here at Dawson. This creates an employee-friendly market, which makes my job sometimes a little difficult, but I pride myself on coming through the field and personally knowing the struggle of making it as a craft worker. And I'm here to help each and every one of our craft workers. I would offer for any of you that might be curious the opportunity to sit down with any of our workers, apprentices to field leaders, and ask them whatever you like. You might hear how we've given multiple field-wide wage raises without being asked for it, or maybe gift cards being sent out during the holidays just to take the edge off that holiday stress and help fill the freezer. We do all of this because we value our craft workers. They make us successful in this great community. Number two, having a third party represent you as a worker really isn't needed in this market because besides, the construction unions charge a lot for their services. As we spoke about, the apprenticeship programs. Every union carpenter pays, I believe it's 93 cents an hour. We've partnered with the AGC. We cover that cost. The company covers it. None of our people pay a union or an apprenticeship checkoff fee. We actually pay our apprentices to go to school. While they're in class, they're paid their normal wage to go get training and be better. Union carpenters pay roughly $9 for every hour worked to ensure they have insurance. Insurance is great, totally understand that. But that's cost, right? That doesn't stop after 40 hours a week. It doesn't stop after 2,000 hours a year. It's every hour worked. That's $9 an hour that comes off of that worker's paycheck. Now, no matter the fact if maybe they're tribal, maybe they have a spouse that has insurance, maybe they're still on their parents' insurance, there is no opting out. It's one size fits all at that point. $7 an hour if you fail. $7 an hour for retirement, which if you fail to finish the vesting process, I believe is 3 years without a permanent break, that money is gone. And so on, we go down to $6 an hour for union dues and PTO accounts, roughly $6 an hour. What does all that look like for a craft worker in a typical year? $1,900 for the apprenticeship deduction, $18,000 for insurance, $14,000 for retirement, $12,000 for dues and PTO. With taxes and other various deductions, round up to $49,000 real dollars not coming home for the craft work on an average year, lost to the unions because they don't allow for folks to opt out. It's one size fits all, and if you don't fit, you'll lose that money. Third, if we really want to do something for our local workforce, the number one complaint by far we hear is the lack of affordable housing options available. We have a housing crisis, and taking more out of the worker's check to pay the union is not the answer. I would remind everyone here today that multiple studies show that PLA agreements increase construction costs 10 to 20%, which will slow down construction and push the housing prices higher and higher by keeping inventory down. That's all I got.
Thank you, Dan. Hey, Lance, how do I work this thing? Okay, perfect. Okay. Hey, thanks for the opportunity to be here tonight. There's 4 main points we'd like you to take away from on project labor agreements. And the first is a project will cost significantly more if you have a project labor agreement in place. Most studies show 10 to 20% cost increase. As a general contractor, we have first-hand experience where we've worked for government-mandated PLAs. And even California Governor Newsom in his veto of PLAs said they didn't have the budget for project labor agreements. And I've had a career of estimating project costs. I could sit anybody down that wanted to see why the cost impacts of a project and walk you through the mechanism of how that would work. But it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of how much your project will cost, how much more it will cost. And if you think about the Mercy projects you just saw up on the board, which congratulations.
Well, you built it.
Yeah. Thanks. So on time and under budget, yeah. So but there's probably a 70% merit shop crew and a 30% union crew on that first job. If it was a PLA mandated project, it'd be 100% union, and we'd lose 70% of the low bidders on that project. And then if you look at the phase 2 Mercy, Ram Construction, another merit shop contractors on board for that job. And again, if it was a PLA mandate, Ram would not have been in the running there. In fact, the three proposals, the only three proposals, I believe, for that project were all merit shop contractors. So we're in a largely merit shop-based county. I believe 87% of the contractors here, the workforce here is merit shop. So that's what would be taken off the table if a PLA was put in place. The second, so first point is the project will cost significantly more. The second point is union representation. They provide a lot of value, but they also charge a lot for their services. Right off the top, it's about $10,000 a year annually for a journeyman, full-time journeyman carpenter that would be paying out for dues. 5% of a carpenter's wages goes to dues, and there's some other add-on costs, but it's about $10,000 a year off their check that if they're represented by the union, they're paying to the union, where if they're with a merit shop contractor, they're not paying any of that money. They take that money home. The second, as Dan touched earlier, is the health care. And the real kicker with the health care, it's for the folks who already have it covered. If they're Native Americans, retired military, if their spouses have coverage, or if they're young and they can buy insurance for a quarter of the cost, that $20,000 a year comes off their check whether they need it or not. They cannot opt out. Where with merit shop contractors, the worker can opt out of that requirement. So there's another $20,000. Then the third bucket, if you will, is the pension and annuity. And that, in round numbers, is another $20,000 that comes off the worker's check. And if they do not vest, in 3 years, that the union retains that money. So that could, if there's a government mandated, report mandated PLA, and somebody goes onto a job for a year and a half or 2 years, they would contribute close to $40,000 and then walk away from those contributions. So it is, it's not for everyone, let's say. Some people it works, but it doesn't work for everyone. The third thing we wanted to touch on is the majority of our county workforce is non-union, and I think it's like over 90% of minority women and small businesses are non-union. So the very people we're trying to help with a lot of these policies, it actually hurts them, and they would steer clear of the work. And I really encourage you to read the letter from Lummi Nation. They speak to all these points of why they're so opposed to a project labor agreement. And that's why over 80 firms contacted Lance and said, hey, we're opposed to this. So it damages the folks we're trying to help the most. Then the fourth point I wanted to leave you with was, unions provide a very skilled workforce, but unions have zero accountability and zero responsibility for the outcome of a project. They'll tell you that they can help with schedule or they can help with costs, but they have zero responsibility. That's the general contractor. So unions, in fact, one of the contractors with one of the worst reputations in the county is a union contractor. And I'll share that name offline, but that, again, with zero accountability or responsibility, so it's the contractor who's responsible for the schedule, the budget, for the safety, for the quality, and again, it's the contractor's competency and integrity has nothing to do with the workforce. It's everything about the contractor, who you're hiring direct. So in closing, PLA will cost your project significantly more. It costs the workers who are forced to join a PLA or go through a union to work on a county or port project, significantly more. It hurts the small local minority businesses, and there isn't any accountability for project performance. So we appreciate the opportunity to speak on the impacts of project labor agreements, and available to answer any questions you might have.
Okay. Thank you all very much.
Okay.
Questions or comments, Commissioner Bell?
You stated the Lummies had an objection. Can you summarize that letter? Because I don't see it. And then a couple of those displays that you put on the, can we get a copy of those? Or is there a hot link?
Yeah,
I'll distribute the whole presentation to the commission. The Lummi letter is in the presentation.
was it? It's in there.
included.
Can you give me the Cliff Notes version?
Well, basically that they were opposed to because many of their tribal workers do not, join the union. A lot of times for the reasons that Pete had mentioned, they often have their health care and those items taken care of.
And they have their own training facilities, and yeah, I really encourage you to read that, but it's harmful to the tribal workers, so.
So when you went through your list, you said insurance was $9, retirement was $7, and dues was $6, so there's about $22 an hour.
Yeah, if you look up in the red there, it's $23.38.
I'm good.
Yeah, you did pretty good.
I did the math in my head.
Yeah. So,
Okay.
okay.
Yep, that's what I got.
All right.
And I just want to reiterate, this really does not impact the port from a substantial standpoint right now. We're interested in economic development. And I happen to be listening to the mayors discuss this. And it's the reason you're in front of this body today is that there were some concerns about what it would do to economic development down the road. So I heard a lot about the wages, and I heard a lot about the employees, but really our concern is how do we grow this economy? How do we make sure we've got quality housing? One of the things that you said that I didn't get enough background on was how does this impact private builders on housing? If you're just a single builder and you're building a house in the county, are you subject to this?
Oh, it wouldn't get built. We have trouble making apartment projects pencil or housing pencil, and you add on additional government regulations and PLA requirements, yeah, the guys just wouldn't build.
So the single-family home would be impacted?
Yeah, absolutely, if that was part of it. Yeah. Well, that's what's in the draft ordinance, so the draft may change, but yeah.
As prime sponsor of the ordinance, may I answer your question? As currently written, the ordinance would only be subjecting public work funded by county dollars at a threshold of $5 million, again, subject to change. This would not have any impact to private development, and it would not supersede any projects that were conditioned by state or federal funding.
And you don't, give me just.
Oh, you ready?
I got you, Hank. Okay. And one of the biggest concerns I've got is the jail. And I know that just the tariffs, just the things coming.
Can't blame me for that.
Right? I see the escalation in cost at the jail.
Yeah.
And that's the biggest project you've got on your plate currently. So the question is, how does this impact the jail construction? And if the cost is going to be 20% higher, do we have enough money with what we've asked the voters to approve in that proposal? The concern is that this will, not only this, but also the tariffs and all the other things coming at us are going to throw us out of that marketplace. Do we have enough money in that budget?
As you know, there's a lot of moving variables with the jail build right now. We did get a brief update from the administration, and we'll hear more next week as well. We're anticipating that if there is a route for incorporating these sort of community benefits and values into the jail build, it'll likely happen at the time of the bid and the contracting. We can also explore the different funding mechanisms, and so we'll probably shift away from the sort of PLA for the jail build. We are very interested in the community benefits agreement model, though, because it does incorporate a kind of community engaged process. So, I mean, the jail is already doing community engaged process with the Incarceration Prevention Reduction Task Force, a lot of the listening sessions that the county has held over time. So we believe we're really close to aligning these sort of values that we're trying to codify. We're already pretty much aligned with the jail
Going to
build.
exempt the jail from this?
The jail, no, the intention would be to incorporate some of these community values into the jail build. That's got to be our,
Subject to this, it's a public works.
yeah, so the jail build would be theoretically, public work over $5 million would be subject to whatever comes of this ordinance. So jail build, Northwest Annex, 23-hour crisis relief, potentially the Wacom ferry replacement, any infrastructure, bridge, culvert replacements that exceed $5 million. So that there's like a long history of community benefit agreements on large projects. So that's what this is exploring.
And are you in agreement that it would cost 10 to 15%, 20% more to build the jail under that agreement?
Those aren't the numbers I've heard from some other experts, but again, I think those points are debatable, and that's why we're willing to engage stakeholders and kind of learn what the data is behind that. I've heard opposite as well, so it's just a matter of reconciling those different perspectives.
How does the opposite happen?
Because PLAs or CBAs prevent lockout and strikeouts, there tends to be an efficiency that comes with that. They also pre-identify some of the labor conditions, so there's just a lot of more transparency about it. So a lot of it is kind of trying to build certainty into the project, and part of that is bringing labor to the table. I think a lot of the times these negotiative processes include owners of the projects and the contractors, but not the labor, and so really trying to align the workers' values as well.
If passed, this would be a permanent?
The current mechanism would be an ordinance, which would codify it for county public work. But the policy levers are still very much in debate, and we're understanding the sort of how to frame this ordinance in a way that meets Whatcom County's needs.
If I'm correct, this is a draft that is a work in progress.
Yeah, I would say the draft that has somewhat been leaked is very early stages. It was a draft mostly inspired by the version that Snohomish County recently passed unanimously. So a bipartisan 5-0 vote to establish a project labor agreement. We pulled some from that and adapted it to fit what we believed to be more tailored to Whatcom County. An example of that is Snohomish counties, and for example, King and Seattle focus on economically distressed zip codes. We learned that only one zip code in Whatcom County would qualify under that, and there would be kind of an administrative and reporting burden. So we shifted away from economically distressed zip codes and instead focused on sort of a countywide defining local worker to include residents within Whatcom County. So that's just an example of how we sort of tailored our early conversations. The memo that will be before the county council next week kind of outlines maybe 6 different policy levers that we're now exploring, many of which have been informed and inspired by the discussions we've had with the contractors and with other stakeholders as well. The labor compliance program we learned about through a conversation with Multnomah County. We've also been in touch with Snohomish County and some of their contracted expertise as they stand up their PLA program. So again, very much a work in progress, and we're adapting, and we don't want to delay projects or increase costs. So this is more a matter of just making sure we're doing it the right way at the right time, and trying to do the best we can with what we have.
The number of people who are afraid of this is overwhelming, which is why we're dealing with it. And my biggest fear, again, is that it will have an impact on the economy. It'll have an impact on our taxes at some level. As the only, never miss an opportunity to say this is the only jurisdiction that did not raise their assessment this year. Score one port. I want to make sure that we don't lose what we just gave back in excessive costs down the road, so that's a big concern.
Yeah.
It seems to me that PLAs can range a gamut from everything from incentivizing unionization in an agreement to something that is much more focused on local work from the region. It seems like there's quite a big gamut of how these can be implemented, and that most of the opposition I'm hearing today is around a perception of forced unionization or required unionization, and I don't even know if that's part of the final direction that you're going with this ordinance.
No, I think we're of the firm opinion that the county shouldn't show preference or favor to union or non-union. So really, we're trying to establish a framework that's going to be inclusive to all contractors. It's really mostly focused on labor standards, which many of which, like prevailing wage, are already codified. This would go a step further in terms of enforcement of prevailing wage, making sure workers are getting what they're rightfully due for the work they've performed. Some of the other around priority hire typically is attached to some combination of a CBA, PLA, or CWA. And again, priority hire is where you're really able to hone in on trying to ensure local work for local workers. And so this is our mechanism to actually keep these dollars here locally. I think with big projects, we do run the risk of an out-of-state or out-of-country contractor. And so again, like, I think the aligned goal here is like, how are we keeping these public work projects local? And there's obviously tremendous economic benefit of that.
It's the opposite. I've heard that in order to meet the union qualifications, they would have to go to a firm somewhere else, and we would lose out. Some of our small businesses would lose out on that work. So I'm hearing both. And really, at the end of the day, I want to know, why do we need this?
Yeah, again, the hope is maybe using a poor analogy, all ships rise with the tide, right? The idea is when we're bringing standards up, we're benefiting our local communities. And so again, the why behind this is how are we making sure that we're keeping local projects local and setting up contractors and workforce alike for success, and making sure we're raising the bar on wage enforcement, safety, and a workplace free of harassment, discrimination. Yes, there are aspects of these values that land on the owner of the project, and I think that's what's cool about these agreement frameworks, which is like you've got all the partners in one space kind of working through what each can offer on the table to make the project of benefit. And of course, the northern star on this is community. It's in benefit of the community. So that's what's really cool about these community benefits agreement is, and again, there are examples, and I can send my memo to you all so you have sort of the plethora of examples. But some of these success outcomes for projects, thinking about economic equity, thinking about affordable housing. I mean, there are aspects of these jobs that can result in those sorts of benefits. So again, you might not get affordable housing out of a jail build, but there might be other projects down the road that are able to demonstrate some of those benefits.
Of that list that you listed on the page that you brought up when you started discussing it, how many of those are already in place by state law and don't need an agreement of this sort to embody them? I mean, most of what I heard you say are already mandated on me if I have a project here in the county, and they don't require an agreement. So why would you create an agreement to codify what's already in place for me?
Yeah, so the biggest one is priority hire. That's the one that is enabled by one or more of these types of agreement models. So that's what's enabling us to say we want to set a goal for a certain percentage of the workers to be local or to be women, minority, or veteran status. So that's kind of the big one that gets latched on. A lot of the others can come about in different policy ways. So for example, we're exploring what of these can be accomplished through the bid and contract process, right? And that's something that we've had in-depth conversations about. And so when you put the bid out, you say, okay, it's going to be an expectation that, you know, X, Y, and Z requirements are met. Again, it's, anyways, there's a little bit in a lot of these different policy levers that can be explored, and we're actively still doing that work.
It seems the priority hire may be the biggest bone of contention.
Can I interrupt, Commissioner Bell? That is not a bone of contention. We are totally, the contracting community is totally in support of community hire and local participation. That's why we had initiated before any of this process.
Priority hire, which is a different thing.
No. The priority hire that's described in this is the local hire. And that's what is considered the priority hire when.
They are two different things.
They are two different things, but in the way it was defined per the draft ordinance, it's local hire.
Right, but priority hire is not a merit-based system.
Pardon me?
Priority hire is not a merit-based system, correct?
Well, priority hires could be defined is about where workers are living, not necessarily if they're union or non-union.
And that's what we're talking about. We support the local no matter what.
Right.
The only thing we're opposed to is the aspect of requiring the workforce to be in the union for the project, to be part of the project.
So Lance, if there was not language around a requirement for unionization, would a lot of your opposition diminish?
Oh, most all of it would diminish. It's the unionization component that they don't want to be a part of.
Yeah. Well, I know Councilmember Galloway to be a thoughtful and insightful person who's a good collaborator and listens to feedback. So this is not an ordinance for us to decide on. I'm glad we're having an opportunity for discussion, and I appreciate you coming and speaking with us and sharing about the intentions. But I really think there are a lot of opportunities for collaboration here between these organizations.
We agree in that the aspect of the community benefit agreement can be helpful for our community. The component that is the requirement of our workforce to be in the union. And we've mentioned this, and I've mentioned this to Councilmember Galloway several times. Remove all that language, there's no issue.
I wanted to just check in with Commissioner Briscoe. Do you want to jump in here before Ken asks his 12th question?
Well, you guys are doing fine asking questions and juggling the hot potato.
Okay.
Some of the things that bother me about and what I've listened to here, is the fact that they want to put forward something. We talk about affordable housing, we talk about childcare, we talk about all these things, and someone wants to put something forward that's going to take roughly $30,000 a year out of a person's pocket that they don't need taken out of their pocket because further down the road they don't want to be a part of that retirement plan where that money is supposed to go, or they have their own insurance. So, and I read the Lummi letter that was sent to us here. They make a lot of good points. I've never been opposed to unions. I worked in a union. My father worked in a union. To me, it's not about the union part of it. It's about taking someone's monetary gain and putting it in this puddle somewhere, kind of like Olympia does at times with us, and it just disappears. You never see it again. I don't think that part of it's right. That's the part that I have real indigestion with. The other thing I see is that for some reason, certain groups of people, so to speak, think that money just falls out of thin air. Things like this, the taxpayers are footing the bill for all these projects we're speaking of, the governmental projects. And if you're having trouble, with housing already and putting food on the table, and the government's got to go to the people for more money to build these projects because PLAs or whatever increase the cost of the project a tremendous amount and really don't do much for the overhaul a population. And you got to remember, money's not falling out of the sky. It's coming out of those people's pockets that are trying to eat and get a home. So I think there needs to be a lot of deliberation and negotiation on this thing before it goes anywhere. And I think that it's going to be a long haul, and there's going to be a lot of emotion involved. And as you two have said, we're not really involved, so to speak, very much in this, but people wanted, I guess, our opinion. So my opinion is that we got a long ways to go before this should be stamped out as a law.
Okay. All right. Good comments.
Thank you.
If I may, I wanted to maybe correct something. We're not opposed to unions. If somebody was up proposing that everything be 100% non-union, I'd be up here arguing against that as well. It's what we're pushing back on is having it all one-sided and discriminating against one workforce versus another. Our most recent PLA project in Alaska, the carpenters could not supply enough workers for us. So we'd call the hall and they'd say we have nobody available to supply, and so we'd have to find a non-union worker, introduce them to the hall, bring them through that way. So it's having the option to go union or merit shop, both, is what's in the county's best interest or in any project's best interest. But when you start dictating it has to be one or the other, then that's where it costs the project more, and it's detrimental to the project and to the community. So,
Yeah, Lance, do you want to come up and address this real quick? I don't want us to spend much time having a union non-union debate here. That's not really our purpose. But
I'm not here to do any of that. This
want to
is
just give you a moment
the
here.
Carpenter Schedule A, so I think I'd be a good source to maybe add a little bit of context to it. These numbers are very misleading because it's prevailing wage that we're talking about. So unless you guys can argue, the package that's being shared here would be the same package that a non-union contractor would be paying, right? Would not be receiving these crazy, outrageous numbers that you guys are running here. This is not what the employee pays, right? So if you look at the line items here, the total taxable wages to the left, those are what the employee pays, right? That is what you make. $61.54 an hour is what you make, right? The $5.96 for the pension and annuity, that's in addition to $55.58, which gets you the $61.54. Every other line item to the right of that is paid by the contractor. So these misleading numbers that we're paying $50,000 a year annually as a member, and yet I can still afford to buy a house, and yet I can still afford to have food on the table, I must be making $500,000 a year the way that this graph looks. So these are very misleading numbers, very misleading slideshow. In fact, if you guys were to pull up the contractors that you have on there, HB Hansen, who is listed on there, I reached out to them. They never even were given permission to put their name on that. So a lot of this is misleading. I also want to just elaborate a little bit. This is prevailing wage that we're talking about, meaning this isn't affecting the private entities that are being discussed. This is already a platform, a level playing field that's been set. This isn't going to cost the jail 20% more because the jail is going to be done with the prevailing wage language used. I don't see how this could negatively impact it 20%.
Didn't explain to me, and I really regret saying this because I thought DeYoung was in New Zealand, but now I realize I've just subjected myself to another hour and a half conversation with him. But why do you need it then? Right?
The intent and the spirit of this is to get more of the community on these job sites. I visit job sites all the time, Harcourt being one that I've been to. I'll tell you what, the people working on that project, for the most part, are not people who live in Bellingham, not people who live in Whatcom County. They don't live in Skagit County. They don't live in Snohomish County. They live in Seattle. They live outside of state. That's why you guys are seeing the terrible performance that you're seeing on that. They're not skilled workers. They don't impact the community positively because the paychecks that they're receiving, nonetheless, are terrible. They're not being able to provide that money back to the community that you guys support.
A lot of hyperbole on both sides.
This is, yeah, and this whole PowerPoint, I'm so glad I stayed, was so one-sided without providing supporting documentation. I could give you a PowerPoint that says how PLAs are the best thing in the world and everyone who's going to be on them is going to be a millionaire. I don't have that, but I could put a PowerPoint without supporting documentation that shows that. This to me is clearly probably not intended to have me or other people who work as union members in this, I'm still talking, in this conversation. This is absolutely blasphemy. And I can also go into other things why this is important. And Pete, by all means, elaborate on this.
Okay.
No, I just want to ask one last little thing. Sunnyland Elementary School, they used a non-union contractor, Hernandez Framing, right? Or not Hernandez, Casabella, who wasn't able to actually pay their workers the appropriate rate, so they misclassified them. They actually put a lien on the property so that they couldn't even actually finish the school, which I believe Dawson bailed them out, but it was their own subcontractor that they used. This is why we need to lift the tide to raise all boats. This is absolute blasphemy, crazy, big business over trying to support the workers who should be here talking. I don't see a Dawson worker here. I see a Dawson superintendent.
Zach,
that's all I have. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Zach. I think we're gonna.
We're getting carried away.
I think we're going to wrap up on the discussion here. I said earlier I didn't want it to devolve into a debate over unionization, which I think has its place in other forums. I think for the purposes of this conversation, this has been informative. I think we had opportunity to ask some good questions. I appreciate that we were able to have multiple perspectives. You know, when we talked about this at our last commission meeting, I indicated that I was interested in hearing the same presentation that Ken heard at the small business. I did make a comment that I was looking for a balanced presentation. I think it's important for us, and on our agenda, we really only had one part of that equation, which I appreciate the points you guys made, and thank you for taking your time to be with us. I just wanted to thank Councilmember Galloway and some of the members of Labor who came to, on their own time as well, to illuminate us and provide some of the balanced perspective that wasn't necessarily on the agenda.
And my last point is that just the fact that it's here in front of the port means it has an impact on our communities.
Sure.
And the reason that we're here as a port is to make sure it doesn't have a negative impact on economic development as we go forward.
Yeah.
So the real threat from my standpoint is that we don't harm the community in any way, shape, or form by whatever back and forth happens, but that we continue and we can present a positive picture for Whatcom County, regardless of where this goes.
Yeah, and I think we want to remain engaged in the conversation. We see the opportunity for impacts, and so we want to be part of the conversation going forward. Okay, Commissioner Briscoe, any other questions or comments, Commissioner Briscoe?
Yeah, I would. The gentleman that came up and spoke last there, I forgot his name, but I'd appreciate it if he could get other information to us, the numbers he was speaking of. If he could get that to the commission, so we had to look at as well as other presentation here, I'd appreciate it.
Okay.
I'll follow up with a PowerPoint. It's been sent to us, so I'll redistribute it to the commission.
Yeah, Rob will make sure we get some additional information, Commissioner Briscoe.
All right, very good.
Okay. All right. Well, that.
Other than that, I have nothing. Thank you.
Very good. That brings us to the end of our public meeting. We will open it up for an additional round of public comment. Same rules as before, 3 minutes max, and we ask that you keep your comments respectful for the community. Do I have anybody signed up? No one signed up? Who would like to come forward first? Dan?
Bring this down to my level. Good evening, guys. Dan with the Working Waterfront Coalition. Just wanted to give a quick report from the past conference in San Diego for the National Working Waterfront Network and say that we returned from that with a lot of good information, a lot of good strategies, and a lot of good network contacts. And I really appreciate and thank you to Mr. Gowron for coming down and doing a presentation with us. We really appreciated talking about the collaborative things that we have done together as a community when we can avoid avoid hyperbole and charged language and come together and really talk and build together. We have a unique thing here in Whatcom County, and I can't tell you how impressive it was to go down and talk with other working waterfront networks across the nation and hear how they're doing and hear the projects that they're involved in and recognize that we have some very cool things happening here in Bellingham that are very unique in the nation. So just thank you for all the collaborative work that you have allowed us to do with you and for all of the collaborative work that you do in the community. Really appreciate it. And secondly, just to let you all know that our Tied to Table tickets are on sale for April 26th. So we do encourage you all to come down. It's on sale over the website. And congratulations to the port for being the first ticket buyers. So thank Aaron Bisson. He was the one that was on it. But we all invite you down to that. Hope to see you there. That's April 26th. Thanks, guys.
Thank you. Anybody else?
Is it on the same topic we just went through?
No, not necessarily. I just wanted to say thank you for your time. I greatly appreciate it. All I would ask is that if there is, a stance that, a neutral stance, why don't we open this up and have a true workshop session that we could present both sides and have a fair dialogue over. And I hope everyone has an amazing night, and I do appreciate your time to listen to our concerns regarding both matters. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? Anybody online? Yes, sir.
Hello, my name is Elion Mbesi. I'm a resident of Camino Island. I'm an organizer with the Washington Northern Idaho District Council Laborers, and I'm about to talk about the subject on the PLA. PLA is very important for our community up here. My dad I'm an immigrant. I grew up in Kenya. Moved to the States about 15 years ago. My dad went to school up here in Whatcom County. He went to Western. My sister went to school up here in Western. They worked in this community. This PLA is very important for this community. Trying to vote the PLA away from here is it's going to hurt the community. This PLA has been able to personally help me grow from when I moved to this country, go to the job site to job site. It's just paid for my health and welfare. It's paid for my house, paid for my family, paid for my schooling and my brothers and everybody else. So trying to push that away from the community is just going to hurt the people. This number of the contractors seen up there, they are underpaying their workers. Unionize, it's nothing wrong. There's nothing wrong with the unions. It's the unions are there to fight for the workers. The unions were started by the immigrants in this country way back then. So this is just a war towards the union companies, union contractors. Everybody can go out and bid for jobs. It's a open field. You can go fight for jobs out there, but trying to push this and say it's pushing union shop from people, that's not true. Everybody gets the right to choose. They want to be union. They want to organize to be union or don't want to be union. I mean, you heard my brother here got up there and spoke, right? Some of those numbers up there, they haven't done the studies yet. They're just picking up numbers, whatever they got to use up there. Paying for those fringe and benefits is what's helped us to pay for the apprenticeship program. The kids coming out of high school, they get to go to those schools and learn for free, not pay for whatever. They're sending their students to the CITC, and they're getting some sort of cut out of the paychecks. This is trying to push away for wage thefts. This is why they're going to get away with all that stuff. So PLA in this community is going to be the best thing for it. Please consider that. Like you said, put it on the table. Let's all kind of talk about it before we shut it down. That's all I have.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Anybody else? Okay, that brings us to the end of our public comment, and we move into other business. Commissioner Briscoe?
Well, what I had, I forgot about. I didn't write it down. This has been an interesting evening. A lot of information moving around. Good information.
Okay.
So I'm going to pass on that tonight and hold
Okay.
it for next meeting.
Very good. Commissioner Bell?
Yeah, I don't have anything either. No, I'll leave it. I'm going to hear from Young anyway.
Like to spend a couple minutes telling you about a project we're doing. Was not on the agenda, but the person who's going to tell you about the project is leaving. You'll see why if she steps up. And she's not leaving permanently. She's leaving for a short period of time.
Yeah, hi Commissioners. Sarah Eastwood, Controller. So this didn't have time to wait till the next commission meeting. So that's why we threw it on here. But I wanted to give you a brief update on the Harbor Center Building Safety Improvement Project here. The team and I just really wanted to be super transparent before we get into the construction phase, because this is going to affect the safety of port employees and the public coming into the building. So in 2023, there was a building hazard inspection done by the Bellingham Police Department. So they did a walkthrough of this building, the Harbor Center building, and they noted a couple areas of concern from a safety standpoint. So this project focused on two of those. So one was the external access doors for this building. So the recommendation was that the external access doors should be entered using proxy cards instead of keys. So one of the reasons for that is, say an employee loses their key, then it's much easier to just deactivate that fob rather than having to rekey the whole building. So that was just one example. But the follow-up for that recommendation is that these doors, the access doors, have already been fitted with proxy cards. And the process is up and running, and it's seeming to work just fine. So that was the first phase of this project. The second phase is, or second area of concern, was the lobby and reception area just through those doors here. And the police officers recommended that either, for the safety of the port employees, the front door remain locked during all of business hours, or they suggested adding an additional wall in the reception area. So I wanted to show you, this is what it currently looks like. The photo on the left side would be that door there in the middle. That is the door that they recommended being locked. So what would happen, and the reason why we don't really want to go with that project, or with that option, is because somebody could come in the outside door and then just be kind of stuck in that little vestibule area. It's not heated, it's small, they wouldn't have any access for communication with reception, so reception would still just be buzzing them in. We're back where we started. So the picture on the right, what they were suggesting is like where the reception desk curves there, they would connect a wall, or they said to connect a wall to the Shuckson conference room. And what would happen then is someone would have access to the lobby, they can talk with reception, but they don't have access to the full building. So that's kind of the process, or the step that we're thinking to take. So this one here is our mock-up of what we think that this would look like. So what that is this is polycarbonate material, and it's translucent. It's I had to write this down because I have pregnancy brain. Impact resistant material. So people couldn't just like easily get through that door, but it's also clear. So it doesn't just totally cut off the public from the internal. And so what we would do is on the left side there is the polycarbonate material would be floor to ceiling, and there would be a door. So that door would also be entered with a proxy card by port employees. And then on the right there, where currently we have plexiglass, that would all be polycarbonate also. And it would not quite go all the way up to the top of the ceiling. We're planning on leaving a 6 by 12 inch gap there at the top, so to allow for proper ventilation, so we're not creating two separate rooms. And the little entrance there at the bottom is what currently we have at reception, so it's for small packages or passing paper back and forth. So that would be the construction of the setup and what we're planning on. And then I also kind of wanted to go through the logistics, because there was two purposes of this project. So one is the safety of the port employees that are housed in the Harbor Center building. The next is the customer service aspect. So we don't want to lose that feature. So currently we have reception sitting at the desk there all day. Well, with it being locked and everything, it wouldn't be required that our receptionist would need to sit up there. We want to make sure we're using the highest and best use of her time. So we have added an additional desk in the accounting office, just down and around the corner, where she would be seated. And so then what it would look like from a customer standpoint is they would walk in, they'd have two options. Either one, go to the door. So at the door there would be a camera, there would be signage, and there would be a little keypad that shows, or that would have maybe some directions or something easy. So say they press 1 for packages. The receptionist would be pinged at her desk, so she could either buzz somebody in right then, or she could come out and meet them. So very quick customer service. Or what people are used to is going to the reception window, so we needed an option there as well. So there would be a port phone, just like at our employee desks and everything. They could dial, say, 1 for reception, or they could dial someone's extension. So if they knew someone was gonna, that they're meeting someone, they could just call their extension immediately. But again, quick customer service, they would just dial 1 for reception. She comes from around the corner. So I just wanted to explain the logistics of it and the purpose of the project before we begin construction. So any questions, comments?
There's no action needed by the commission. This was approved in the budget, so it's fully funded, and just wanted to make you aware of the project.
Okay, thank you. Any questions or comments, Commissioner Bell?
Yeah, this isn't what I envisioned. It looks ominous, to say the least.
So those, that material is all see-through. It's not, the white is showing that there is something there.
Telling me it's not as ominous as it looks.
Yeah, yeah. I can send you some pictures. They did have mock-ups. They did this at Portiscadget. And so we had those there, but it's a different setup, but it is totally clear.
If I just walked into the Portiscadget on my way south next time, can I
Yeah.
see it?
Yeah.
Don't bother with the pictures.
Okay.
You got better things to do.
Okay.
Okay, Commissioner Briscoe, any questions or comments?
Wouldn't it be cheaper to put a heat duct in the outer room there and a buzz box there of the same thing rather than build all this stuff on the inside?
I'm sorry, I can't understand what he just said.
He's asking if it would be cheaper to put a heater.
It seems a bit extreme to me. Why couldn't we just put the phone on the wall after they come in the front door and heat that room there so there's heat? Save a whole bunch of building time. And I mean, wow, that's my comments. Wow.
Okay, this gives people a place they can sit, though. There's chairs here. It's a bigger area, so you can have more than just, 2 people standing out there, because a lot of time people do show up here in groups for group meetings. So we thought the bigger space would be advantageous for that.
So just to clarify, what's the threat?
Okay.
What's the threat?
Yeah, so what the police officers...
We're the ones that make the decision. Is somebody's going to come to my house.
Right.
Get this at my front door.
What the police officers had said was, so there was a lot more in the report than just this. So this would stop us having to do a lot of other things in the report. But one of the things that they had said was if somebody walks into the building, right, there's a sign that says, please check in with reception. That's just about it. So I don't want to give a how-to here, but people are able to just walk right in and go upstairs. And what does everybody do that's upstairs? They're all shelter in place. So that was their plan, is that everybody would just shelter in place. And then we would need blinds or fog windows on all of our interior windows, doors, everything like that. So there was a lot more steps than if we didn't just take it at the entrance.
Is there evidence to show that ports are under attack?
I don't think so. I think it's just a precautionary measure that we would plan to take. We've been really lucky that we haven't had any incidences, but there have been some very uncomfortable, I oversee reception, so there have been some very uncomfortable incidences that have happened in the past that wouldn't have or we would have felt safer if there was something like this.
I was acquitted on those charges, just so you know.
Well, we certainly want our employees to feel safe, and I do think there is, that vulnerability of the unchecked access to the rest of the building that I assume this is similar feedback that our other government partners are receiving from the police department as well. The county has, at their administrative building, there's a checkpoint you have to go through. They've gone as far as having, you have to get your bag screened and go through a metal detector. The city has, I don't know what they have in the same comparison.
Well, their whole lobby area is open, but then to get individual departments, the doors are typically locked, and you have
Locked
to.
on individual departments, yeah.
Well, and the courthouse is always at the county level.
And the courthouse is more secure. Okay,
Okay, thank you.
thank you. All right. Thank you all for joining us today. And if there's no more questions or comments, I believe we're all done.